Scream movies have always been a must-watch for me this time of year, and they've always been among my favorite horror movies of all time.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
But this year in particular, I don't know why, they're just hitting different. After my most recent watch through, I'm more than confident saying that Scream is up there with Halloween as far as my favorite horror franchises go. It's just appealing to me more the older I get. But seriously, I think Scream is so special because it manages to pay homage to what came before, while simultaneously being its own thing, which is not easy to do. It's got an iconic female heroine who galvanizes the whole franchise, an awesome concept for a killer that can constantly be reinvented. I'm ranking these movies today, but honestly, I like all of them. Yes, even Scream 3.
That's right. It's a rarity in the horror field, but it does exist. And it is a force to be reckoned with.
So take it for what it is, but this is my ranking of the Scream franchise. Scream 3 currently has the distinction of being the only film in the franchise not to be written by Kevin Williamson, at least as of this point. And honestly, it shows. I think Scream 3 lacks a little bit of the wittiness, as well as the memorable characters that are present in the other sequels. I think it has issues with tone from time to time, and to be quite honest, it comes off a bit goofy in some parts. The other Scream movies were able to balance that tone much better, to make the transition between comedy and horror and make it seem much more seamless. Scream 3 also tones down the violence, which is mostly due to the Columbine massacre that happened around the time that it was being made. I guess it's understandable that they didn't want to piss anyone off or offend anyone, but I do think the movie suffers quite a bit from being the only one in the franchise that doesn't embrace the violence. I think the finale of the movie feels a little bit convoluted, and they do try to explain things a little too much, like having Roman be the mastermind behind all of the killers, or at least Billy and Stu. I think that might have been a little bit too much, to be quite honest, and a little bit unbelievable. And I think the attention to detail with how it handles the mystery and the reveal isn't quite there like it is with the other movies either. And let's be honest, Courtney Cox's bangs are probably the scariest thing in this movie. I will say Neve Campbell's Sidney Prescott continues to consistently be the best thing about these movies. Her character arc does get a proper conclusion, and she does get a very good send-off at the end of this movie. I think the thing that this movie did well is it does feel like a finale, which it should have, because at that point it was the end of a trilogy. I think Scream 3 is mindless fun. It doesn't really do anything new with the concept, but I still think it's better than most slashers released around that time. I think Scream 4 really upped the ante when it comes to the phone calls and the kills. The phone calls are much more descriptively graphic.
I've got plans for you. I'm gonna slit your eyelids in half so you don't blink when I stab you in the face.
And I found the kills to be really brutal and over the top. And it was all done on purpose. In true Scream satire form, the movie is meant to poke fun at remakes that feel like they need to up the violence in order to make themselves stand apart from the original. I always enjoy Scream's meta approach to the satire. I particularly enjoy about Scream 4 is the opening sequence, where it's kind of movie within a movie within a movie. It really beats home the idea of when these franchises go too far and just keep making sequels. Something that Scream itself may be guilty of someday, but right now it looks like they are handling it in the best way possible. But that all depends on how Scream 5 chooses to attack that notion. I think using streaming to basically film the murders was a great way to bring Ghostface into the digital age, and it just shows that the franchise is progressing, as was the killer reveal, which basically was two people who wanted to be famous, like Sidney. That's a very modern concept, I think, and people going to great lengths to get their 15 minutes of fame. To go as far as to launch a murder plot to basically kill Sidney and take her place as the sole survivor.
You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
I thought it was a really nice twist and an interesting way of updating the franchise. My one gripe about this movie is there's not a lot for the OG cast to do. It really feels like their story is over and they're kind of just here for fan service at this point, which is not really what I want because I enjoy these characters. I like these characters. I feel connected to these characters. Neve Campbell is great as Sidney, as always, but this story does feel a little bit tacked on at times after her triumph in Scream 3. I think it's still great and I enjoy Scream 4 a lot, and that's why it's number 3 on my list. If you make a movie that's designed to poke fun at the slasher genre, it's only natural that you have to make a sequel.
So we're gonna carry on and plan the sequel, because let's face it, baby, these days,
You gotta have a sequel!
And we all know Ghostface is a different person each time out. It was really interesting how they made one of the killers have a real personal vendetta against Sydney. It's not just about her mom anymore, now the focus is being placed on her and what she did to Billy Loomis. And the crazed Mrs. Loomis then recruits a crazy film fan who helps her plan and execute her revenge. Mickey isn't quite as over the top as Stu, but he's pretty out there. And I have to admit, it does feel like he is trying to live up to Stu a little bit with his performance.
See, I've got my whole defense planned out. I'm gonna blame the movies.
But Scream 2 is a great follow-up because it still has its wit, it still has its attention to detail that was there in the first movie. It feels a bit formulaic at times, but it's supposed to, really. That's part of the plot. Someone is recreating the events of the first film while also trying to simultaneously one-up them. And even in the case of Randy, basically finish what Billy and Stu couldn't. Randy is in a lot of ways the character that makes this satire possible. He's basically the audience, he's seeing what we see. So I gotta be honest, it's really disappointing when he dies in this movie.
Why are you even here, Randy? You'll never be the leading man.
Fuck you!
I love how it uses what we know from the first movie and tries to turn our expectations around on us. It's very good at hiding who's actually behind it all and making you think it's someone when it's really not. A lot of people have questioned the big coincidence at the end of the movie where all the characters seem to converge on one spot without really having a reason to. I will say when I watched it this time, that climax does feel a little bit rushed and a little bit forced in some areas. But overall, I think Scream 2 is a worthy successor to Scream. It took what Scream did and it built on it, and that's what a good sequel should do. It shouldn't be surprising that the original Scream is my number one. I feel like I've said this 20 times this month, but this movie reinvigorated the slasher genre in the 90s, while also managing to define it. Everything that came out after this movie in the slasher genre felt like a copycat of it. Even H2O, which is part of a franchise that inspired Scream to begin with.
There's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect.
When you take the rules, also known as tropes, and use them in this movie and analyze them and break them down and find new and clever ways to use them and to flip them around and play with our expectations. A lot of people have talked about it before, but a scene that jumps to mind in particular is when Randy is watching Halloween and he's telling Jamie Lee Curtis basically to look out behind him, and at the same time Ghostface is approaching him from behind, so he's essentially not listening to his own advice.
Watch out, Jamie. You know he's around. You know. Oh, there he is. I told you he's right around the corner.
I think it's such a little clever moment of commentary. Wes Craven's attention to detail in this movie cannot be understated. He meticulously laid out everything, all the way down to the way that both Stu and Billy hold the knives when they're in the Ghostface costumes. Like they act differently depending on who's in that particular scene. When you see Ghostface being a little bit more animated and a little bit more clumsy, you're led to believe that's Stu in the costume because he is the least organized of the two killers. Then you have Sydney's growth just in this movie alone, where she starts as this timid person who went through this unspeakable tragedy, and now once the Ghostface situation arises, she slowly becomes a stronger person throughout the course of the film.
Careful. This is the moment when the supposedly dead killer comes back to life for one last scare.
Not in my movie.
A lot's been said about Matthew Lillard's over-the-top performance, but I think that's what makes it so special.
I'm feeling woozy here.
He and Billy are absolutely insane, and by the time the twist happens, even if we didn't see anything prior to that would hint that they would be the killers, you're convinced by their performance that they're capable of something like this. I think Scream is Wes Craven's best horror movie. I might catch some flack for that because I know he's much more known for, say, the Nightmare series, but I think there's a reason he stuck with Scream the way he didn't stick with Nightmare. I think the franchise offers almost endless possibilities. It can constantly reinvent itself. Plus, you have a core group of characters who are in every movie, and that helps to create a foundation and create a family atmosphere that both the filmmakers and the viewers find appealing. It's got to be an incredibly appealing idea to a filmmaker to have something like Scream put down in front of you. So I applaud everyone involved with this franchise. I think it's one of the best horror franchises that there is. Even when it dips in quality, it's still better than most. And that's my Scream rankings. Give me your Scream rankings in the comments down below, and let me know what you thought about mine. As always, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications, and I'll see you next time right here on Real Shift. Thanks for watching. Peace out.